The neighbor had left the small box on the kitchen counter and waved awkwardly before retreating into the dimming afternoon light, leaving the mother alone with her thoughts and the tiny creature that yipped softly inside the cardboard container. She knelt down and slowly opened the flaps, peering in at the soft brown eyes that blinked up at her with a mixture of curiosity and quiet urgency. The baby in the crib stirred slightly, and a faint whimper escaped as if acknowledging the presence of the new visitor. The mother hesitated, unsure whether to introduce the puppy, yet she felt a strange pull, a sense that this small creature had been sent for a reason that she could not yet understand. Carefully, she lifted the puppy from the box and held it over the crib, allowing the baby to reach out a weak hand that trembled slightly before making contact with the tiny fur coat. The baby smiled faintly, and it was a smile that seemed to fracture the heaviness that had settled over the house for weeks. The puppy wiggled against her grasp and nuzzled the baby's hand, and it was impossible to tell which was responding to which. But the moment lingered as if time itself had paused in the soft golden light that streamed through the window. The mother set the puppy down on the floor, and it immediately began exploring cautiously, sniffing at the corners of the room, its small tail flicking back and forth like a pendulum counting off some unseen rhythm. It paused by the baby's wheelchair and sniffed the wheels before glancing back as if to ensure the baby was watching, and the baby did watch, and for the first time, eyes focused with intent, rather than the vacant gaze that had seemed permanent over the past weeks. The evening deepened, and the mother prepared a small blanket for the puppy beside the crib, letting it curl into the warmth as she made dinner. She noticed the puppy's ears twitch at every distant sound, and when a floorboard creaked, it barked once softly, as if to announce that it had perceived the intruder. She laughed nervously to herself at how protective it seemed, and a strange worry tugged at her heart, as if the puppy somehow understood dangers she had not yet seen. The baby watched the puppy closely and made small movements trying to reach for it, and the puppy would adjust its position patiently, letting the little fingers graze its fur without pulling away. The bond seemed to grow minute by minute, like a thread being spun invisibly. Between the two small lives, night fell and the storm clouds gathered, and the wind began to rattle the window panes. The mother held the baby in her lap, wrapped in a thick blanket, and the puppy sat at her feet, its body tense and eyes darting to shadows that moved across the walls. The baby began to cry, and the sound was sharp and urgent, piercing the rhythm of the storm outside. The mother tried to soothe with soft humming and rocking, but the cries escalated and the puppy suddenly sprang forward, nudging the baby's bottle that had tipped over on the floor. The bottle rolled slowly towards the baby, and the puppy barked sharply at the mother, who was frozen in disbelief. She bent down and picked up the bottle, realizing that the puppy had understood the problem and had acted before the situation could escalate further. Her hands trembled, and she whispered softly to the tiny animal, praising it, but the puppy barely acknowledged her words, its focus returning immediately to the baby, who had now settled slightly as the bottle was put back in place. The following days passed in a strange rhythm, the mother noticing more and more the small acts that the puppy performed instinctively. It would place itself between the baby and the edge of the crib and nudge the blanket to ensure warmth. It would bark at the faintest cough or wheeze and paw gently at the mother if she lingered too far from the room. The baby responded with quiet coos and tentative movements, and slowly began to gain strength in small, unexpected ways. The neighbors began to take notice, peeking in through windows and leaving notes of curiosity at the door, asking about the mysterious puppy that seemed to have a mind of its own. One morning, the mother awoke to find the puppy gone from the blanket, and she panicked for a moment, searching the corners of the room before hearing soft whines coming from the hallway. She followed the sound and found the puppy nudging the baby in a strange position. Its small paws pressed gently against the wheelchair, and the baby had somehow rolled slightly forward, struggling to sit upright. The mother's heart leapt in alarm, and she rushed to help, but the puppy stood its ground, barking at her in short, sharp bursts as if warning her not to interfere. The baby looked at the puppy and smiled a wide, toothless smile and slowly began to reach forward, trying to grasp at the nearby toy. The mother was stunned. She had not expected the baby to even attempt the movement, and she realized that somehow the puppy had coaxed strength and courage from the child in a way she could not explain. The days grew longer, and the puppy's presence became almost ceremonial. It would pace the room in silent vigil, in the early morning hours, and curl beside the baby during afternoon naps, its small body a constant and silent reassurance, and the baby's tiny hands began to mimic the puppy's movements, reaching out tentatively and grasping for objects that had once been beyond reach. Friends who visited were initially skeptical and whispered about coincidence or luck, but the mother noticed the puppy's actions had a precision that defied explanation. The puppy would bark once to alert a visitor, and then stand at attention, letting the baby observe every action as if teaching a lesson that only they could understand. One evening, the lights flickered and a thunderclap shook the walls, and the baby began to tremble in fear. The puppy sprang immediately to action, nudging the baby closer to the mother and circling protectively around them. It pawed gently at the blanket and barked sharply whenever a shadow loomed across the room. The mother realized that the puppy was not just responding to events, but anticipating them. Its senses attuned to the baby's needs and fears, with an accuracy that left her both amazed and unnerved. She could not help but wonder whether this small creature had a mission beyond her understanding, or whether it was simply the luckiest coincidence that had ever entered her life. The nights passed with the storm raging outside, and the puppy never left the side of the crib, its small warm body a shield against the darkness, and the baby's whimpers diminished. With every passing hour, it seemed to communicate in some secret language with the child-guiding movements and offering comfort in ways that went beyond instinct. The mother began to document the behaviors, noting patterns and reactions she could not explain, and she sent messages to the neighbor who had delivered the small gift, asking if there was something special about the breed or training that she should know about. But the neighbor only smiled mysteriously and shrugged as if the secret was theirs to keep. The days turned into weeks, and the baby began to show small signs of improvement movements that had seemed impossible before. The puppy continued its vigilant care, and the bond between the three of them became a rhythm of trust and unspoken understanding. Each time the baby attempted a new motion, the puppy responded with encouragement, barking softly or nudging a toy closer. The mother watched with growing disbelief and admiration the tiny animal who had seemed so fragile and ordinary at first now revealed extraordinary abilities that no one could have predicted. The community whispered about miracles and blessings, and the house filled with a strange energy that seemed to pulse from the bond between the child and the dog. At night, the mother would sit and watch the puppy curl beside the baby, tracing the contours of their small body with gentle paws and quiet breaths. She would remember the moment the neighbor had knocked and smiled, thinking how something so small could carry so much power to change the course of a fragile life. She wondered if anyone else had experienced such quiet heroism in the form of a tiny animal, and felt a strange gratitude and awe mingled with disbelief. The puppy would sleep lightly and wake at the slightest sound, ensuring that the baby never felt alone in the night. Its vigilance unwavering and precise, a mystery that no one could explain, and yet the results were undeniable. The mother began to notice subtle signs that the puppy seemed aware of more than just the physical needs of the baby. It would pause and stare at the ceiling as if sensing something beyond the walls, and when a visitor approached, it would position itself strategically between them and the crib, alert but never aggressive. Its presence was a shield, a guide, and a companion all at once. And she began to record each moment the baby made progress, attributing every small victory to the invisible lessons the puppy imparted through touch, presence, and guidance. The baby began to reach for objects with purpose, to turn the head towards sounds intentionally, and to smile with genuine joy at the sight of the small brown creature that had arrived like a secret guardian. The mother realized that the puppy was teaching patience, endurance, and courage to both her and the baby in ways that no human could. She observed patterns that seemed almost intentional, nudges at precise moments, soft barks in the dead of night, and gentle guidance through movements that the baby struggled to make. She tried to share the story with friends and family, but it always sounded exaggerated until they visited and witnessed the connection firsthand. The baby's face would light up the moment the puppy entered the room, and the tiny animal would respond in kind, each interaction an intricate dance that spoke of trust, love, and an unspoken understanding beyond words. The stormy nights became a routine test for the baby. And the puppy's skills. The mother would watch as the small brown eyes glimmered in the darkness, evaluating every sound and movement before springing into action. Its instincts were precise, deliberate, and effective, and with each night the baby's confidence grew, the whimpers diminished, and the movements became stronger and more deliberate. The mother marveled at how a single small gift from a neighbor could unfold into a series of events that seemed almost magical and yet entirely real, leaving her with awe, disbelief, and an understanding that some forces in life could not be explained by reason alone. The days merged one into another with subtle victories and quiet moments of suspense. The puppy would vanish briefly, only to reappear. With a toy or blanket perfectly placed beside the baby, the mother began to notice that its actions seemed coordinated, almost as if it had a plan. And she could only marvel at the intelligence and devotion displayed in ways that transcended the ordinary. The baby's tiny hands began to grasp with precision the toys the puppy nudged closer, and each successful movement was met with a wag of the tail, or a gentle nudge, a silent cheer from the small creature that had become the center of their universe. The mother recorded each detail, her amazement growing daily as the bond deepened and the room filled with an almost tangible hope and anticipation. The morning light crept slowly across the floor, casting long shadows in the nursery, and the puppy stirred quietly at the foot of the crib, its small ears twitching at the faintest creak of the floorboards. The baby had begun to roll over slightly more on its own, and the mother watched with bated breath as the tiny hands struggled to grip the edge of the blanket. The puppy immediately padded over, nudging the blanket closer with precision, and then backed away just enough to allow the baby to pull at it with a small, triumphant smile. The mother's eyes welled up as she realized that the creature had become more than a companion. It was a teacher, a guardian, and a mysterious force, guiding the fragile life before her. Days passed, and neighbors began to whisper and peek through windows, drawn by the story of the small brown puppy and the paralyzed child who seemed to awaken with each interaction. The mother did not mind the curiosity, but she remained vigilant, watching the bond unfold in ways that were astonishing. The puppy would anticipate the baby's movements, gently guiding the tiny limbs toward objects or nudging a toy closer if it sensed frustration. Its actions were deliberate and careful, and each small victory built momentum like a secret choreography no human could have planned. The mother began to understand that this was not just chance. This was something extraordinary, unfolding silently in the quiet corners of their home. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, the puppy grew restless, pacing near the crib and barking softly at shadows that flickered across the wall. The baby cried weakly in discomfort, and the mother rushed forward, but the puppy positioned itself between her and the child, nudging her gently to wait. It seemed to sense a danger she could not see and instinctively acted. With urgency, the mother froze as the puppy barked sharply and pawed at a small spill of water near the edge of the crib. The baby had rolled slightly toward it, and the puppy's intervention prevented what could have been a dangerous slip. The mother clutched the child with shaking hands, realizing that the animal had saved the baby's fragile body yet again. The nights were long and filled with suspense as storms rolled in from the horizon, thunder rumbling and lightning cutting through the darkness. The baby shivered and whimpered, and the puppy sprang into action, circling the crib and pressing its warm body against the small form to provide comfort. Its soft whines and gentle nudges synchronized with the baby's breathing, and gradually the cries subsided. The mother marveled at the loyalty and intelligence displayed in every movement. Every night the puppy seemed to learn more, anticipating every sound and every reaction with an accuracy that defied explanation. Friends and family who visited could not believe the precision or the care the small animal displayed, and they began to murmur about miracles, about luck, and about forces beyond understanding. The baby's movements became bolder, small arms stretching out, with more intent fingers grasping toys and reaching for the puppy, who responded with gentle encouragement. Pawing softly at a rattle or nudging a blanket closer, the animal seemed to orchestrate each action like a conductor guiding an orchestra. Its presence infused confidence in the child, and the mother watched each new attempt with awe and gratitude. The puppy never left the room for long, always returning with a toy, a blanket, or simply a soft nudge reminding the baby that it was not alone. Each day progress accelerated small gestures, growing into deliberate actions, and the mother realized that she had been witnessing a transformation the likes of which she had never imagined possible. One evening, the family hosted a small gathering, inviting neighbors and close friends to see the miraculous progress. The baby lay on the mat surrounded by toys, and the puppy sat alert beside it, waiting for the right moment. As guests approached, the baby reached for a toy on its own, and the puppy nudged it closer, allowing the child to grasp it fully. The mother's heart swelled, and the visitors whispered amazed at the coordination and intelligence of the small creature. They could not explain the bond they witnessed, the quiet miracles, performed in silence, night after night, and the small brown puppy had become the center of every eye, every thought, and every whispered story that spread throughout the neighborhood. The stormy nights continued, and with each one, the baby's confidence grew, the puppy's protective vigilance never waning. It barked once at the faintest, unusual noise circling the crib and nudging the blanket to keep the child warm. Its small body a constant reassurance, a steady force of attention and care, and the mother could not help but watch with disbelief and reverence. Each day brought new challenges for the baby, reaching and rolling slightly further every time, and each time the puppy responded precisely, guiding positioning and offering gentle encouragement. Its instincts seemed almost supernatural, as if the animal knew exactly what to do and when to act. Its quiet heroism shone in the shadows of the night and in the warmth of the morning sun. Weeks passed, and the baby began to sit upright, with the puppy supporting gently beside it, paws braced for balance and encouragement. The mother held her breath as the child laughed for the first time, unassisted, giggling at the puppy, who barked softly and wagged its tail wildly. The neighbors gathered quietly outside the windows, witnessing the scene of tiny triumphs, and the whispered stories grew larger as everyone spoke of the extraordinary small brown puppy who had changed the life of a paralyzed child. Its presence had become more than companionship. It was a silent force of courage, hope, and transformation. One night the power went out and the house was plunged into darkness. The baby whimpered and the mother felt panic rising, but the puppy moved instantly to the crib, placing itself carefully between the child and the shadows. Circling protectively, it barked softly at the faintest movement and nudged the blanket closer with precise attention. The mother realized that fear had no hold in the presence of this small guardian, who seemed to know exactly what to do, even when the world around them was chaotic. The baby reached for the puppy, and with its gentle guidance sat upright, holding the soft fur in a moment of triumph that no darkness could diminish. Finally, the day came when the baby rolled from the crib to the floor, with the puppy assisting with gentle nudges and supportive pawing. The mother gasped in amazement, and the neighbors gathered at the door, unable to contain their excitement. Each movement the baby made was guided and encouraged by the tiny creature that had seemed ordinary at first, but revealed extraordinary gifts of intuition, care, and courage. The puppy barked softly and wagged its tail, watching every gesture, and each time the baby grasped an object or moved intentionally, it nudged it further, offering silent applause in the language only they shared. The story spread throughout the neighborhood and beyond. Whispers of miracles and quiet heroism filled the streets. The mother held the baby in her arms and watched the puppy curl beside them, and she knew that something small had created something immense. The child was learning strength, patience, and hope, guided by a silent guardian whose loyalty was unwavering. Its tiny brown eyes gleamed with understanding as it rested beside the baby every moment, teaching the unteachable, offering comfort and guiding progress in a way that words could never capture. The community marveled, and the bond between child and animal became legend. Small miracles, witnessed daily by those who saw but could never fully comprehend. As the sun set over the house, the mother looked down at the baby rolling slightly toward the puppy, who immediately nudged a toy closer to encourage the grasp. The baby laughed, reaching out, and the puppy barked softly, wagging its tail and nudging again. Each day brought new movements, and each movement was met with the quiet guidance of the small brown creature who had arrived as a neighbor's gift and became the architect of courage and hope. The mother smiled, understanding fully that the puppy had done far more than protect or comfort. It had opened a door to life itself, a path toward independence, strength, and joy in the smallest and most extraordinary ways. The baby reached forward and held the puppy gently, and the puppy leaned in, allowing the touch to linger. A soft bond of trust and love filled the room, and the mother whispered thanks to the neighbor who had,